Hello interwebs and welcome to my channel. So for all of you Trekkies out there and book nerds, for today on my channel I'm going to be doing a review of the latest Star Trek Discovery novel, Die Standing by John Jackson Miller. This is a Star Trek Discovery novel that follows the character of Empress Georgio, or I guess former Empress Georgio, between seasons 1 and 2 of Star Trek Discovery, basically chronicling what happened after that deleted scene that we saw between seasons 1 and 2 where she got recruited by Leland to join Section 31, and then where we meet up with her again in season 2 where she's clearly a full member of Section 31, seems like she's a willing participant in Section 31, but there's that lingering question of why did someone who was an emperor, who literally ruled the galaxy and was left on Kronos at the end of season 1, why would she willingly seem to go along with just being another cog in a much larger, albeit morally dubious organization like Section 31? And that's where this book comes in. And just to let everyone know, there will be some mild spoilers for the beginning of this book, but I will not talk about the ending or any of like the end crazy stuff that happens in this novel, just beginning stuff in this novel as well as my overall thoughts of the book. And that being said, this book is honestly probably my favorite Star Trek Discovery novel, and that is actually really saying something, considering I think that most of the Star Trek Discovery novels that have been coming out over the past 2 years or so have really knocked it out of the park. I believe there's been like 6 or 7 Star Trek Discovery novels, and all but one of them have I really adored, and even the one that I didn't like, the Tilly novel, was one that I feel like was good, but just I wasn't the target audience for it. It just didn't really resonate with me because it was more of a young adult book. So, me saying that this is my favorite Star Trek Discovery novel is honestly really putting this up there, but that's not a surprise considering that this was written by John Jackson Miller, who many of you may know from his Star Wars books, but also us Trekkies may know him from his earlier Star Trek Discovery novel, The Enterprise War, which was similarly excellent. It wasn't my favorite Star Trek Discovery novel, but it was definitely up there, and it followed the adventures of Captain Pike during Star Trek Discovery Season 1. But getting to Die Standing, I have to say, John Jackson Miller's characterization of Empress Georgio in this novel is spot on. You can tell that he had just so much fun writing this very sarcastic, quippy, sort of like look down upon the Boy Scouts of Starfleet character, and he perfectly captures Michelle Yeoh's voice and her just sort of very quippy, funny lines and her belittlement and insulting of basically anyone that isn't her, but in particular her insulting of Leland that you saw on Star Trek Discovery Season 2. It definitely continues in this book to hilarious effect. So I think he just perfectly captures Michelle Yeoh's portrayal of Empress Georgio, and I think it works brilliantly. And I think his characterization of really getting into that question of how did this character, who is clearly not someone who was ever going to take orders from anybody, suddenly end up working for Section 31, an organization that was part of Starfleet, something that she despised just as a core concept. Why would she want to preserve something, even if again she got to be morally gray with Section 31? And I really liked that this novel really dove into the meat of that, and really dove into how she got from that point to where we see her in Season 2 of Discovery, to sort of see how she starts to get inundated with a little bit of how Section 31 operates, but also recognizing the inherent contradictions in Starfleet's ideology and how not only Section 31 works, but how Starfleet works as well. Like there's this one moment in the book that I thought, it was just a small little piece that I thought was really brilliant, where she points out a lot of ships that Starfleet has are named after war heroes, war veterans, things like that. And I thought that, and she said like, well, I bet you don't name your ships after the losers of those fights, but you're just talking about like, oh, you want to honor their heroism, their sense of exploration, but you're also acknowledging war heroes, which, while it wasn't directly dealing with what we're talking about today, was a small nod, I don't think intended by John Jackson Miller, because I think this was written probably well before this, but a lot of the stuff we're talking about today with Confederate monuments here in the United States, with wanting them to get taken down because of their history that they represent in our country. Again, not as targeted as that, because again, I don't think John Jackson Miller had that directly in mind, but it definitely touches on similar themes and just pointing out the ideals that Starfleet has and how they actually implement them. And I love that Empress Georgio was sort of the vehicle for like understanding that inherent contradiction that is in Star Trek from its very inception, not just since Section 31 was created or how Section 31 was displayed in Star Star Trek Discovery. So it's just a really, really interesting deconstruction through her character, and just really brilliantly written as well. There's also a bunch of other really great stuff in this novel as well that I highly enjoyed. In particular, I really enjoyed the characterization of Leland in this novel. John Jackson Miller, again, kind of has a little bit of, poking fun and prodding at some of the issues that a lot of us fans had problems with Section 31 as they're represented in Star Trek Discovery. Like pointing out the fact that, you're a secret organization that has badges. Like, that's something that John Jackson Miller actually makes fun of and points out in this novel, and actually gets to start to explain it within canon by kind of pointing out the fact that Leland, the character that we saw in Star Trek Discovery Season 2 as the head of Section 31, is kind of bad at his job. And we could get hints of that in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, but they really actually make it very clear in his character that Leland is actually not all that competent. He's not a bumbling fool and an idiot in this novel, but he's not exactly the best person to be leading a secret organization like Section 31. And I like that this novel starts to give that sort of characterization to him, helps massage some of the issues that we saw in Star Trek Discovery Season 2 that a lot of fans maybe had critique with or had issues with. It doesn't break it. It doesn't like say, oh, that was stupid, Star Trek Discovery Season 2, how dare you? But it does like sort of lightly, sort of gently massage. Again, this is what Star Trek novels do. They sort of massage canon to make it all fit. And I think that he used that to like really actually create interesting characterization for Leland, and I think that was wonderful. We also get scenes in this novel with Star Trek Discovery's Admiral Cornwell, and she is always wonderful, kind of playing the in-between between Leland and Empress Georgio, and kind of combating with both of them, and kind of being really frustrated with the situation, so I really enjoyed her characterization here too. But there are two really truly standout characters in this novel besides Empress Georgio. One is Emini Dax. Yes, one of the previous hosts of the Trill that we all know from Deep Space Nine, Dax. And it's always nice to get a little bit more of Dax's host sort of fleshed out. Normally when we go back in time to see some of Dax's earlier iterations, they usually focus on Curzon, and we haven't really gotten all that much with Emini, both in canon and out of canon, and in sort of the beta canon novels. So it's really kind of nice to sort of get a little bit more for her character here, and we kind of see that she's a character who is really kind of frustrated with her lot in life. She was someone who definitely had a huge success earlier in her life being a gymnast. She became very famous, like sort of an Olympiad sort of athlete, a celebrity, but now kind of is past that part of her life and wants to do more, wants to get involved in either Starfleet or sciences or medical stuff, and really just can't ever break away from her celebrity status. And so it's just this interesting frustration that she has with where her life is, and I thought it really played out well with how her character developed and how she was sort of this naive character who wanted to do more, and that really just hits at the core of Dax as a character and Starfleet and Star Trek in general as an ethos. And so I thought that was a really great way to bring this character in and then have that character play off of Georgiou as sort of this very innocent, sort of naive character against the most like vicious, awful human in Empress Georgiou. But the true standout of this novel, besides Georgiou, who is the real standout, but the true standout and the most surprising addition to this novel is the character of Finnegan. Yes, that Finnegan, the Finnegan from the Star Trek original series episode Shore Leave, the very stereotypical, like, jokey, like, image that Kirk conjures up of a friend from the Academy who is always, like, joking and pulling practical jokes. That Finnegan, the very, like, stereotypical, like, Irish jokester character that we got to see briefly in Shore Leave.
Come on, it's me, Finnegan. All right, Jimmy boy.
That's the character that John Jackson Miller decides to bring in and play off of Empress Georgiou. And I think Finnegan truly stands out in this novel. He is not only hilarious, but actually draws out some really interesting things from Empress Georgiou. It's not a pairing I would have initially thought of when I thought, like, who should I pair with Empress Georgiou, who's around in sort of the original series time. But the fact that he does, and he does so with such a aplomb, and has Finnegan just, he's portrayed as very much a sort of jokey kind of character, but he's never really played over the top, if you get what I mean. Like, he does have some nuance and some pathos to him, and you kind of learn where his sort of, like, jokey attitude has really gotten him in Starfleet. And I won't spoil, but where we meet up with that character is not where you would have expected him to be, but makes perfect sense and does allow for some interesting character development for him as the novel goes on. So all that stuff is absolutely brilliant in this book. And also, I don't want to get too much in the plot because I don't want to spoil too much for you, because it is a very complex plot going on, but it definitely dives into some very interesting parallels to both the Mirror Universe, to the Federation as well. There's some good sort of juxtapositions between how Empress Georgio remembers the Mirror Universe and also this other entity called the Troika, which are very Federation-like in their presentation, but they are sort of a warped, very different view of the Federation that, again, plays off this sort of idea of Georgiou coming to understand what Starfleet really is about and what Section 31 really is about in this story. And it gets into some interesting spy games, but then Empress Georgiou also has her own agenda separate from Section 31, that you get to see all these different motivations and plot intrigues going on. And also some cameos from some other big names in Star Trek if you're looking for those little pieces of sort of canon connections to other series besides Discovery. Those are definitely in there. So yeah, that's pretty much all my mild spoiler thoughts on Star Trek Discovery's novel Die Standing. Again, probably my favorite Star Trek Discovery novel so far, so credit to John Jackson Miller. I'm very excited by this book, and I hope that you read it. So if you have read it or are planning to read it after my review, I would love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the novel or what you're thinking of the novel before you get it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more Star Trek book reviews, discussions on Star Trek topics, my reviews for Star Trek Lower Decks, either have started or are about to start depending on when this video goes up, because I kind of film these in advance, so I don't exactly know where I'll be putting this video yet, but look out for my Star Trek Lower Decks reviews that come out after every episode of that show. All that's on this channel, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of it. Also, you can help me out over on Patreon, and I have 2 podcasts as well, Star Trek Behind the Lines and What the Frel with Council of Geeks, so check out those podcasts. I do a lot of stuff, people. But even if you don't subscribe, comment, check out my podcast, help me out on Patreon, even if you don't do any of that, I'm just glad that you stopped by, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, and a special thank you to Piston Twisted Garage, Ashley Allen Bokikio, Miranda Janelle, Eli Bergmas, Ashlyn Solstice, Christina Dalliance, Greg Gillum, Munir Amlani, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Wayne Twitchell, Alexander Miller, Ish the Mad, Buttoneer, Randy Thompson, Mouse Pounder, Jemshin, Susan Banks, Wellington Marcus, Lorena Mesa, Mari Neckar, John Stell, Gavin Robinson, Michael Beam, William Stewart, Jason Knott, Maeve, Stephen Clinard, Zach Cody, Subraxis, Wen Dizzle Bizzle, Dante St. James, Gretchen Badger, Polly Mina, Din Hagney, and Bree Beecher. Thank you so much to all of you. I could not do this without you, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.